November 2023, San Francisco. The board of OpenAI unceremoniously ousted Sam Altman. It sent shockwaves through the global tech industry. A few days later, Altman was back, but during that brief window, Microsoft's stock shuddered. Nvidia's stock wavered. Every AI-related stock on the planet took a hit. An internal power struggle at a single company rattled global financial markets. Why? Because OpenAI had become that important. Because AI had become the definitive technology of our time. But today, I'm not here to talk about AI technology itself. I'm going to talk about where the war for AI supremacy will actually be won. It's about land. It's about minerals. It's about the map. The most futuristic tech war in human history is being waged over the most analog thing imaginable, geography. Let's break down how AI works in the simplest terms. AI learns from data. To do that, it requires massive amounts of computation. That heavy lifting is done by GPS, graphics processing units, and the undisputed king of GPS is NVIDIA, an American company. Do you know how much a single NVIDIA 100 chip, the gold standard for training AI, costs? Roughly $30,000. It takes tens of thousands of these chips to train something like ChatGPT. Google, Meta, and Microsoft are pouring tens of billions of dollars into stockpiling them. But the US blocked the sale of these top-tier chips to China. That ban started in 2022. Why? Because AI is dual use. It's military technology, autonomous weapons, intelligence analysis, cyber warfare. AI is fundamentally rewriting the rules of military power. If China gets its hands on cutting-edge AI chips, their military AI advances. The US is slamming the door to prevent exactly that. Remember the semiconductor war we covered in part 2? This is that same war, mutated into the AI era. But there's a deeper layer to this story. What does it actually take to physically build those chips? Rare earth elements. It might sound obscure, but this is the critical resource of 21st century geopolitics. Rare earths is a catch-all term for 17 metallic elements. Things like lanthanum, thorium, neodymium, and dysprosium. Do you know where they're used? Smartphone haptics, earbud speakers, motors, wind turbines, missile guidance systems, radar, and yes, the myriad components inside AI chips. They are baked into the very DNA of modern civilization. You can't build an EV without them. A single F-35 fighter jet requires 900 pounds of rare earths. An Aegis destroyer takes tons. So whoever controls rare earths controls modern industry and modern military power. And do you know where these rare earths are? China. China sits on roughly 35 to 40% of global reserves and accounts for about 60% of total production. But it's not just about mining. In the refinement process, taking raw and turning it into usable metals, China is absolutely dominant, controlling around 90% of the global market. Even if other countries have the rocks, China is the one that makes them useful. In part 6, we talked about oil, how the Middle East held the world hostage with it. In the 21st century, China can do the exact same thing with rare earths, and they already have. The year was 2010. Tensions between Japan and China flared over the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Japan detained the captain of a Chinese fishing boat. Do you know what China did? They unofficially halted all rare earth exports to Japan. Japan panicked. Their electronics and auto industries simply couldn't function without them. Prices skyrocketed. In the end, Japan released the captain. A diplomatic dispute was resolved, or rather, one on China's terms, by a handful of minerals. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single warship was deployed. They won with rocks. Since then, Japan, the US, and Europe have been scrambling to break their addiction to Chinese rare earths. They're developing domestic mines, investing in recycling tech, and desperately seeking alternative suppliers. There are rare earths in Australia, in Canada, in California. There are massive deposits in Greenland, even in Africa. But here's the catch. Mining and refining rare earths is an environmental nightmare. It produces radioactive waste. Western nations have strict environmental regulations, making domestic production incredibly difficult and expensive. China's regulations are comparatively lax, which is why they can do it so cheaply. They sacrifice their environment to secure geopolitical dominance. For the West to break that monopoly, they either have to abandon their environmental standards or swallow massive costs. It's a brutal dilemma. Now, let's talk about data centers. Training AI demands staggering amounts of electricity. Studies show that training a massive AI model like ChatGPT consumes as much power as an entire small country does in a year, and running the service isn't cheap either. One estimate suggests a single ChatGPT query burns roughly 10 times more electricity than a standard Google search. As global AI usage explodes, the power demand for data centers is going parabolic. So where does that power come from? That is a geographical question. You need abundant water. Cooling these servers requires a massive amount of it. You want cold climates to naturally reduce those cooling costs. You need cheap, hyper-reliable electricity. And ideally, it should be renewable, because these massive tech companies all have net zero climate pledges. So, where on earth meets all these conditions? Northern Europe, Norway, Sweden, Finland, abundant hydroelectric power, freezing temperatures, endless water, Iceland, unlimited geothermal energy. Bitter cold, great fiber optic connections, the US Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington State, powered by the massive dams of the Columbia River. That's exactly why data centers are congregating in these specific pockets of the globe. The mega facilities of Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta are being erected next to Norwegian fjords and on top of Icelandic lava fields. In the age of AI, physical geography matters more than ever. Where you can build a data center dictates which nations will control the infrastructure of the future. We talked about submarine cables in part 10. Well, in the AI era, they are life support. AI lives in the cloud. When you ask ChatGPT a question, that prompt travels to a data center, processes, and shoots back. That entire round trip relies on fiber optic cables running along the ocean floor. Cut the cables, and the AI goes dark. That's why AI giants are aggressively laying their own cables. Google, Meta, and Amazon are doubling down on undersea infrastructure. The digital realm is becoming hopelessly tangled with physical geography. We also have to talk about satellite internet. Elon Musk's Starlink, the grand project to blanket the Earth in thousands of low Earth orbit satellites, bringing internet to every corner of the globe. There are over 6,000 Starlink satellites up there right now, and the swarm is growing. How does this connect to AI? AI feeds on data to harvest global data. The globe needs to be online. Currently, about 40% of the world's population, roughly 3 billion people, remains unconnected, mostly in rural parts of Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. What happens when Starlink brings those 3 billion people online? Their data starts flowing. To where? To SpaceX, which runs Starlink, and ultimately to Musk, to the United States. Connecting 3 billion people is a humanitarian triumph. Simultaneously, capturing the data of 3 billion people is a geopolitical masterstroke. Goodwill and hegemony bundled in the exact same satellite. Do you think China is just watching from the sidelines? Hardly. They are rushing to build their own mega constellations to rival Starlink. Space is the new geopolitical battleground. In part 8, we talked about the Arctic being the new frontier. Space is next. From the land to the sea, from the sea to the sky, from the sky to the stars. The battlefield just keeps expanding. Let's look at China's AI playbook. In 2017, Beijing laid out its national AI strategy to become the undisputed global leader in AI by 2030. When the US cut off their access to top-tier chips, how did China react? They pivoted into directions. First, indigenous chip development. Huawei built their own AI chip, the Ascend. It's not as powerful as an NVIDIA chip, but it exists. And the Chinese government is twisting the arms of domestic AI firms to use it. Second, the data advantage. In AI, data is just as vital as silicon. The more data you feed it, the smarter it gets. And China has the data of 1 per billion people. The sheer volume of data vacuumed up by platforms like WeChat, Alibaba, Baidu, and TikTok is unfathomable, and the state has access to all of it. Just look at facial recognition. China has over 500 million CCTV cameras blanketing the country, tracking and learning from billions of faces every single day. Imagine the sheer power of an AI trained on that kind of dataset. The US is trying to blockade China with silicon. China is trying to outflank them with data. It's a geopolitical chess match. You block the pawn, the bishop moves. We talked about India in part 15. India is arguably the crucial wildcard in AI. They possess the largest IT talent pool on Earth. Software engineers, data scientists, AI researchers. Indian-born talent is effectively the engine running Silicon Valley's AI machine. The CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, a massive chunk of the core researchers at OpenAI. India is the world's premier exporter of AI talent, and the US is absorbing that talent to maintain its supremacy. But the Indian government is waking up. They are fighting to keep that talent at home to build a sovereign AI ecosystem. It's the geography of human capital. Which nation can attract and retain the brightest minds? That's what will decide the ultimate winner. I'll leave you with the story of Greenland. Remember in part 8 when I mentioned Trump wanting to buy Greenland? I said it was about Arctic shipping routes, but there's another reason: rare earths. Beneath the ice of Greenland lies one of the largest untapped rare earth deposits on the planet, and as climate change melts the glaciers, those minerals are becoming easier to reach. Why did the US want it? Arctic dominance, rare earths boxing out China. When Chinese firms tried to invest in Greenland's mining sector, Washington and Copenhagen swiftly intervened to block it, because if China secures Greenland's rare earths, their monopoly becomes virtually unbreakable. Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark. It has a population of just 50,000 people. Yet beneath the feet of those 50,000 people lies one of the master keys to 21st century AI supremacy, the ultimate tyranny of geography. So, let's zoom out and look at the big picture. When you map the AI war, this is what you see. NVIDIA's chips are physically fabricated in Taiwan by TSM. See the Taiwan we talked about in part 2. To make those chips, you need rare earths, which are tightly controlled by China. The AI models trained on those chips are housed in American data centers. Those data centers are powered by the hydro dams of Northern Europe, and you connect to it all via submarine cables, some of which were laid by China. All of it exists on a physical map. The silicon spans the Taiwan Strait. The rare earths are buried in Inner Mongolia. The data centers sit beside Norwegian fjords. The fiber cables rest on the floor of the Indian Ocean. AI does not live in the cloud. It lives on the ground, inside rocks, beneath the waves, coursing through power grids. The most futuristic technology we possess is entirely tethered to geography in the most ancient way possible. Let me wrap this up. When we talk about AI, we obsess over algorithms. We talk about models and parameters. But for an algorithm to run, it needs a chip. To build a chip, you need rare earth metals. And rare earths are in the ground, very specific pieces of ground. Whoever controls that ground controls the future of AI. History repeats itself, or rather, it rhymes. Coal fueled the Industrial Revolution. The nations sitting on coal became empires. Britain, Germany, the US, all defined the 20th century. The nations sitting on oil pulled the strings. The Middle East. Rare earths are defining the 21st century. The nation sitting on rare earths is calling the shots. China, what comes next? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what resource will define the next century. But I know one thing for certain. That resource will be buried in the ground somewhere. And the coordinates of that ground will draw the new map of global power. The map itself doesn't change, but the dots on the map that matter do. From a coal mine, to an oiled eric, to a rare earth pit. As those dots move, the geography of world power shifts with them. Even right now, every time you type a prompt into ChatGPT, while your question races through rare earths, fiber optic cables, and frozen data centers to bring you an answer, somewhere in the world, a quiet, ruthless competition is being fought over the dot on the map, on the ground, just as it always has been.